The accusations of Asari Dokubo, former leader of the defunct Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force, after a meeting with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the State House last week, that the military high commander behind oil bunkering in the Niger Delta is still raising a lot of dust. However, since President Bola Tinubu appointed the new service chief, one question many Nigerians are asking is, how will the team work with him to make the nation more secure? Some have been probing the geopolitical and ethnic representation of the service chief. So, Arise correspondent Tolu Ojewumi takes a cursory look at these new appointments.
Since the inauguration of the Bola Tinubu administration, citizens' interest have peaked to know how President Tinubu would stem the tide and how he would select his service chiefs. When he made the announcements, interest veered towards the federal character principle and his promise to not marginalize any zone of the nation. Malam Nuhu Ribadu is the new National Security Advisor. He hails from Adamawa State, northeast Nigeria. Being a policeman and a pioneer chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, it might be of public interest how he will bring his experience to bear in his new assignments, considering that most occupants of the office since the return to democracy in 1999 have often been ex-military generals. Major General Christopher Musa is the Chief of Defense Staff. He hails from Kaduna State in northwest Nigeria. He is a senior research fellow of the Nigerian Army Research Center and served as Theater Commander, Joint Task Force, Northeast Nigeria, Operation Hadinkai, and Commander Infantry Corps. Major General Tawheed Lagbaja is the new Chief of Army Staff. He's from Osun State, Southwest Nigeria. He was General Officer Commanding Headquarters 1 Division. Rear Admiral Emmanuel Ogala is now the Chief of Naval Staff. He's from Enugu State, Southeast Nigeria. He was the Director Lessons Learned, Navy Headquarters. Critics say his appointment could assuage the agitation of the Southeast for an inclusive government. Air Vice Marshal Hassan Abubakar is the new Chief of Air Staff. He's from Kano State, northwest of Nigeria. Till this appointment, he was the Chief of Standards and Evaluations, Headquarters Nigeria Air Force, Abuja. Deputy Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetokun has now been made Acting Inspector General of Police. Egbetokun is from Ogun State, Southwest Nigeria. Till his current appointment, he was DIG Force Criminal Investigations Department, Force Headquarters, Abuja. This move, no doubt, is a significant transition in the nation's security apparatus. With the wealth of experience these men are bringing on board, citizens will be on the lookout not only to see a visible change in the security of the nation, but also to heave a sigh of relief from the agitation of the minority for an egalitarian society and an inclusive government.
So joining us now, as we further review the appointments of President Tinubu, is Mike Ejiofor, a lawyer and a former director of the Department of State Services, DSS, and the president of Alumni Association of National Institute for Security Studies. Great to have you, sir. Let's start with, the case of crude oil theft and the allegations made by Asari Dokubo. What does that say as regards our security system and the military?
Well, it's quite unfortunate that such a statement came from the seat of government, from an ex-militant. I have no blames for Dokubo. I rather blame the handlers who presented him in the State House to make such a statement. It's a known fact that some military men are involved in oil theft, but making a sweeping statement that military top command are involved in this oil theft is not fair, and I don't think it's the right thing to say. You recall that last year, when this oil theft issue became very serious, the Chief of Defense Staff, the MD of NNPC and the rest of them, major stakeholders, the service chiefs, they all went to the creek to identify, and you saw the discoveries where some of the pipelines were pierced and oil being tapped from it. So if the government, the top military brass, like Asari Dokubo claimed, are involved, I'm not exonerating them anyway. I'm not exonerating them, but to make a sweeping statement on the whole military is not only embarrassing and is disturbing. Because there are some good people. In every society, you have some good and some bad people. So some good people will be discouraged. Some of them will be, we are aware that some of these military people make money out of it. But it's not in his position to come and say such a statement, make such a statement. That's where my worry is. But for me, he's a Nigerian, he's entitled to his opinion. But the people who provided the platform on which he made that statement should be brought to book too.
All right, I believe it was the president who was, an invitation from the president, that was where he made that statement, that's Asari Dokubo, when you mentioned that the people who gave him the platform should be brought to book. But let me ask you with regards to the service chiefs. Tolu Adeomi in his report just giving us a profile of each of the appointed, the CDS, the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, and the Chief of Air Staff. He had given us just a snapshot of their background, their experience, and where they worked before. But from your point of view, I'd like to get your thoughts on the appointment or the appointees. The CDS, of course, starting with the NSA, we had a prior interview where we really dissected that, so that's why I'll leave that. But the other appointees, what's your assessment of these appointments?
Well, I don't have a personal knowledge on any of them. The closest I had with them was when I addressed, I presented a lecture in Army Day celebration in Owerri, where I met General Labaja. That's the closest I've got to any of them that were appointed. But from what we have gleaned from the public domain, you can see that they have rich, almost all of them have very rich resume. Then in terms of distribution and spread, I think I must also commend the president. If you recall that throughout the last 8 years of APC government, nobody from the Southeast occupied that position. And I think when we talk of handling security situations, it's not only jackboot that we use. I think this appointment of a Southeasterner, an Igbo man for that matter, will kind of assuage the feelings of people in that area. You also recall that Ohaneze has issued a statement, some of the other people have issued a statement commending the appointment and calling for support to government. Even though appointments should not be based on ethnicity or religion, but there must be fairness, there must be equity in distribution of offices. You can see that almost all the geopolitical zones are represented in these service chiefs, apart from North Central. Of course, you know that North Central is also occupying the position of the speaker. I also believe that the boards have been dissolved. In terms of balancing, I think the president will look at some areas to address some of these problems, areas of agitation, so that we can move forward. But for the appointment of the service chiefs, I think I'm happy with that.
Two things. Number one will be, if an ex-militant can impugn on the character and integrity of our security forces, then how do we redeem? Because underline the word, an ex-militant can impugn on the character and the security of our intelligence forces. How do we redeem? Secondly, how can we foster interagency cooperation with the new people at the helms of affairs? Because that's important. You saw the recent back and forth between the DSS and the EFCC, for instance, and we've seen all that has happened across, various angles of our security architecture in the country as we speak. Even recently, the DSS had to write a strong rebuttal with Peter Afunaya, saying that they are not breaking any law, that they're within the law and all of that, because of all of these attacks on our security forces.
Yeah. On the statement issued by Dokubo, there's little or nothing we can do about it for now, because if you go after him, well, of course, it's left for the security agencies to know what to do, either to call him to expatiate on those allegations. But for me as a person, I would rather suggest that he's ignored. There are some elements of truth in what he said. I'm not dismissing it completely. But to impugn on the entire military, that's why I am not comfortable with. Then if you come to the issue of, will you put rivalry?
Yes.
Because some people... The attacks on our...
Yes.
The attacks on our security agencies. So it is very discouraging when you see the people who are supposed to support our security agencies in achieving its desired goals, impugning and running down the same security agencies. I read the statement by Peter Afunanya, and it was strong, and I commended him for that statement. You see, there are certain things people don't understand. You know, apart from maintenance of internal security, which is statutory responsibility of the State Security Service, there's this omnibus clause that any other responsibility assigned by the president, and president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So if he decides to assign a particular assignment, to give a particular assignment to the service cannot shy away from it. I also get embarrassed when some of our learned men, learned colleagues, will be making some statements as if they are not aware of these laws. And I ask, where and where has the SSS exceeded its bounds as been alleged? If the SSS exceeds its bounds, you have a way of addressing your issues. You go to court. We've seen cases instituted against the police, against any of the, when your rights are abused. So these are channels of handling this matter instead of impugning the whole agency or our security agencies. I'm not happy that our security agencies will be run down on pages of newspaper. It's painful because I've gone through that side, and there are some people who are committed to the job, and at the end of it, people are just running them down. I think we should rather assist and help them to build an egalitarian society.
All right, so I'd like you to, in a recent interview, you spoke a bit in terms of, or you spoke actually extensively on this seeming rivalry between the DSS and the EFCC, and you'd addressed that just briefly a short while ago. But I want you to speak to us in terms of the relationship.
Yeah, you see,
relationship between the DSS and the EFCC now. Yeah. Go on.
You see, there's no rivalry, there's no strained relationship between the EFCC and the SSS. The little misunderstanding, at least I was part of the founders of the pioneer staff of the Nigerian Security Organization. And we started from 15 Awolowo Road. That was our headquarters before the then military president moved us to Abuja. So that has been there was this gentleman agreement. Since you don't have space in Lagos, let us give you some space to operate from. And the EFCC has built its own magnificent. Then we have the SSS has need to use that office again. Correspondence have been exchanged on the issue, and they felt they couldn't leave. I think that was what led to the altercation, but I believe that issue has been resolved.
Did it have to degenerate into what it degenerated into? That's why a lot of people are talking as regards this interagency rivalry. Did it have to degenerate that I hear a couple of rounds went out and rang out on the streets that day? Did it have to get to that level? And that's why, because we are working
Well,
collectively for Nigeria's success. That's what we're working for. But did it have to degenerate to that? Because these are the optics people look at and ask what is going on as regards the security in architecture. And this also segues into the conversation now that some people are saying that now that we have an NSA of the police background, will they be able to work effectively with the military? We've seen police and military fight everywhere on the streets, and it's always a show and a parade of shame.
Yeah, Rufai, I must tell you that if we are honest to ourselves, the rivalry that existed before, from 2007 to 2015, a lot has been done, a lot of improvement in terms of synergy and relationship. I don't want us to even begin to overflog this issue of the clash between the SSS and the EFCC. Because if we begin to escalate it, nobody knows, nobody is talking about it. The president directed that they should be allowed to stay there. And I believe at that high level, the matter has been resolved. Now, if you look at the president, he has said he is going to invest in security. On two occasions, first when he visited the National Counter-Terrorism Center, he stressed the need for synergy between the agencies, because if you are working at cross purposes, there's no way you are going to achieve result. So the agencies must now look at the body language of the president, that they must work together. And the new NSA is a policeman, or was a policeman. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't work together. He must bring to bear his experience, when he was EFCC chairman. Because why I'm particularly thrilled about the appointment of Nuhu Ribadu, a lot of people have questioned, why not military? And there's nowhere in the Constitution that it is written that it must be a military. Otherwise, the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, is not a military man. Don't also forget that Nuhu Ribadu contested for the presidency of this country. So if he had won, wouldn't he be in charge of all the armed forces? There's no dispute. There's no rancor between the office of the NSA. There shouldn't be. I'm not saying that there's not. There shouldn't be rancor between the office of the NSA and the service chief, because it's not as if they're taking command. The service chiefs are taking command from the office of the NSA is to coordinate and collate reports for advice to the president. If there's a need for all of them to come and meet, they will meet and have solutions to problem and advise the president. So I don't see any problem. Even in US, not more than 2 or 3 of the national security advisors were military men, even though they have a military background. We are democratizing. Nigeria is democratizing. We have had, apart from Yar'Adua and Goodluck Jonathan, we have had military presidents. So for them to appoint people from their own constituency, there's nothing wrong with that. For a full civilian president to also appoint another civilian to coordinate security for him because he has confidence, I don't think there's any problem there too.
Just before we let you go, Barrister Ejiofor, just to ask you, in an interview in 2022, you had talked about the importance of involving traditional rulers as, in an advisory capacity on security. Beyond appointment of service chiefs, what other moves can the president make to amplify his security architecture?
Well, for me, the call on traditional rulers is very, very strategic, because before the advent of this our civilization, what democracy, we have governed our people. The traditional rulers have been in charge of the communities. They know the people staying in their communities, so they are supposed to collaborate with security agencies. In addition to that, one other major factor I will also want the president to look at is creation of state police. security challenges are local. So we need local police, community policing. That's the way to go. Because what is happening in Northeast, issue of Boko Haram, you cannot apply the same solution to issue of agitation in the Southeast. They all have their peculiar problems. They have their peculiar solutions.
Okay, sir.
So we need to localize our security challenges to get it solved. Yes.
Thank you so much.